Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Couple on Fire podcast. Tonight, we have some amazing people we have for an interview. And when is that coming up?
Right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Couple on Fire podcast. This podcast is for couples, for marriages, and for families within the Christian community. We exist to help break the stigma that happens within the Christian community. We're talking about divorce, we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about so much more. We believe that all this is possible in this life, strictly based on the power of Jesus Christ and his ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome to today's show. On today's show, we have an awesome interview. We're actually doing something that we've never done before. We're actually interviewing, gasp. We're actually interviewing a couple that isn't in ministry for marriages or blended families. They're actually a victory, a story of victory in blended families and in marriage and in addiction and all kinds of other great stuff. So it's actually awesome. We're actually going to start bringing you guys a little more of these types of interviews moving forward because I think it's amazing to see how God uses people and can actually work through them and in their marriages, and it helps bring hope to other people and their families. So before we jump into all that, do you have anything you want to share that's on your heart?
I don't think so.
You have nothing?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay.
This week, it's for real.
This week it's for, she's like, I seriously have zero things on my mind. Okay, so without further ado, we want to bring on Jason and April, and we're going to bring them up right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, welcome. So we've had an opportunity to actually know these guys for a little while. They're actually part of a group that we have on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of had some opportunities to kind of get to know you guys a little bit, but not everybody that's going to listen or watch on our show knows who you guys are. So why don't you take a second and let us know a little bit about who you guys are. How many kids do you have?
Together?
Yeah, how long you been together? Tell us a little bit about that.
We've been together a couple years. This is April. I'm Jason.
Oh, good. Thanks for clearing that up.
Never mind. But yeah, I've got two girls, just turned 13 and 10. Her little boy is 11. So there's lots of hormones floating around. We've got a dog that travels back and forth with the kids, with my kids. So yeah, just crazy. And then they're all gone for a week, and we try to catch up.
And my son goes back and forth to North Carolina from South Carolina. So he's 4 hours away when he is not with us.
Wow.
How often is that?
Other week.
Every Monday we go and either pick up or drop off.
What do you do during the school year?
I homeschool.
Oh. Well,
There you
that makes
go.
it
I
easy.
homeschool my son, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works out actually really well then. Yeah.
My girls want to be homeschooled. No.
He said no, they're not being homeschooled. So have you both been married before?
Yeah, both been married before. I was married for 19 years. You were.
And I was married for 12 years.
Okay. And you've been married for 2 now?
No, we are not married.
Not married. That's what we needed to hear.
Right.
Not married.
You haven't put a ring on it yet.
Are you? You're waiting on her?
Yeah, I'm waiting on her. Waiting on a bank account right now. We would, if the bank account supplied the right way, we would already be married in the house. We just, it's not happening yet. So she lives in a condo about 100 yards away from me, and waiting on God to say go. And until then, we're just going to sit here and do our little thing in our little condos.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's super amazingly responsible of you guys to do that. I think that's an amazing thing to share with everybody. So you guys don't actually live together then, correct?
No. I have a condo. She is literally 100 yards in the next building. Our kids bounce back and forth, and we bounce back and forth, and dinners and all that. But we feel like it's important for them to understand that it works best, because it's, in my opinion, it's God's design that you not live together till you're married.
I love that.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah, that's amazing.
Bunch of challenges that drive me crazy, but it's okay.
Good, but you guys are working towards, being married. You guys are doing it the right way, which, we were firm believers in God will bless those things, right? You honor God, and God's going to honor, what he has designed for your lives. And I think there's so much to be said for that. So great. That's some awesome stuff. Right? We are right off the bat, we're able to share. So we know that you guys have had some struggles in the past, your own individual struggles in the past. And April, you shared with us before a little bit, and why don't you tell everybody a little bit about that? You've suffered with some addiction in the past. Why don't you share a little bit about your story of addiction and recovery with everybody?
Yeah. So I got into using prescription opiates in college. And that really spiraled. I was an addict for about 10 years, and I went through several different treatments, detox programs, trying to get clean. And it's just nothing ever worked. And in the process, the last time I was using, I got married to my ex, who is a narcissist. And I got clean right after we got married, because he found out that I was using again and made me move back in with my parents. And so it's a miracle that I ever got clean in that situation, because, right off the bat, I'm trying to get clean, and he's going out to bars, sleeping with other women. And, at the time, I don't think I really faith didn't play a big role in that at the time. But looking back on it now, it was only by the grace of God, that I got clean and stayed clean.
Yeah.
So
I love that. So how long have you been sober?
It's been since 2010. So 13 years.
13 years. Wow.
That's
amazing.
awesome.
That is amazing.
Yes. Is it my turn?
Do you have anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Go
Yeah.
roll with it.
I was just waiting patiently, which is unusual for me. So I'm pretty proud of myself. Got to be on my best behavior when we have guests. So Jason, tell us a little bit about your boundaries in your previous marriage, and can you share how you've grown since then? We talked about it a little bit previously, just privately. So tell our listeners.
Well, it's pretty easy to discuss my boundaries from my previous marriage, because I never set any up. It was happy wife, happy life. Doesn't matter what I think. I will deal with it. Let's make everybody else happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I have been through the divorce process and counseling processes, and then just, the whole thing, you learn that how ridiculously unhealthy that is. It's awful that you would live in a situation where, you let somebody treat you any way they want to, and you just take it. And, now I think the pendulum might have swung a little far on the other side. So I'm pretty quick to be like, okay, stop. That's a boundary. I don't like that. I don't want that. Let's not do that. And it's coming from a healtly place, and it's okay that she bring things up. But, your initial trigger is I'm speaking up. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
I'm usually the one that encourages him to put boundaries in his life, because I'm a big boundary person. I'm like, you need to put a boundary up because it's affecting your mental health. So,
and that usually affects it's my children that affect mainly one of my children, maybe the 13-year-old, that affects my mental health probably more than anyone else combined. But she's she's a great kid, but she's 13 and she's a girl. So.
Yeah. Christy's Mrs. Boundary. She's always been. She's very good at having boundaries, really tall wall boundaries around everything in her life, which it took me a lot of work to knock those down with me personally. But I too, Jason, like you, have learned to have these healthy boundaries, because I didn't in my past relationship. I didn't I have all sisters and a mom. I have no brothers. And so I've kind of they've all just, want to chicken head and be bosses. And, and I've kind of just okay, whatever, I've just kind of got this whole whatever lackadaisical, but in return, I get taken advantage of, which is probably a lot of, I would assume, which happened with you in the past. And so I've been able to lean on Christy's support in that way. Be like, no, you need to set a boundary, which is super uncomfortable for me. I'm just like, ooh, I don't know. And I've gotten really good at it. Now I'm like, nope, we're setting boundaries. I love these boundaries. These boundaries are wonderful. So there is some upswing on the boundaries for sure.
Well, what comes with boundaries, and I'm sure, Jason, you can tell this, is that when you have healthy boundaries, it forces you to have healthy conversations. So when you're trying to have a boundary with people, it's like, okay, let's conflict solve this and talk about it. And then, okay, this isn't going to be allowed again in my life. So you have to talk about things that way.
Yeah.
Right. And it's eye-opening when you're coming from where I've come from, as far as no boundaries, anything goes. I'll bend over backward, break my own back to help anybody, anytime, ever, for any reason. There's, I've got work over here to do with it. Doesn't matter. Because, like today, my daughter bought a new laptop, needed it set up. And so, I didn't work a lot yesterday at home. So I had 2 days worth of work to catch up on. And what am I doing today? I'm setting her laptop up.
Yeah.
Running it to her.
And taking it to her. No. But that was, there were some small boundaries along the way that April's like, tell her she's got to wait. Tell her it's got to happen here. And so she's helpful with that. Yeah. And I am thankful for that. But it is super uncomfortable.
It is.
Because, when you've never been there before that frequently, it takes a minute.
See, I was far on the other side. So I was like, I had boundaries upon boundaries upon boundaries because I didn't like anybody, didn't trust anybody, and definitely was like, I'm not doing anything for anybody because I didn't trust anybody. So then I had to, Josh and I were good for each other, I think, because then I had to learn, I need to, allow people in and understand that people will hurt us sometimes and all of those things. So I was like far on the other side, way far, way far. So,
and I would assume it comes from, you guys both having high conflict exes. You guys have shared before with us, off of the show about having some high conflict exes, but how do you guys manage that? I mean, it sounds like you guys beforehand, you guys shared with us, you have to drive quite a ways, you have all these things, but what have you found to be the best way to deal with your high conflict exes?
Texting only. We do not talk to them on the phone at all, because it just, my ex likes to call and have conversations, which lead into he wants to small talk, and then I get riled up and I get bent out of shape. And so we finally were just like, I'm not discussing anything unless it's via text or email, period. Mm-hmm. So he still from time to time calls, and I just will message back, I can't talk, you can text, and kind of move on with it, because I don't have time for that.
I love that, which is a great boundary.
In my case, that was suggested early on by a friend, is like, do not get in a telephone conversation because it didn't happen. It's got to be recorded. So I started for that reason, but then I realized how nice that is. It gives me time to think and process, and me being the boundaryless. It was good for me to be able to slow down. Now my goal is, when I communicate back and forth, it is short as possible, and it's facts only. And, I just, right before you guys got on the phone, I was back and forth with mine over, my oldest daughter has a nutrition program that she needs to be in, and she also wants to play softball this year. And so, it's, hey, the nutrition program starts September 1st. And I just replied back, what about softball? Softball's Tuesdays and Thursdays as well. And I think she needs to be there for that. Can we start the other later? I mean, it's just as short and as simple and as sweet as you can make it, without being rude, but short, simple, facts only. And that's all you're getting at me.
Yeah. So we've had to kind of do the same thing. So us both had certain levels of high conflict exes. Mine was extremely high conflict the whole time. But facts, sticking to the facts, sticking to nonverbal conversations, never going through our children, for communication, sticking to things that are like, it's just this, and we're bringing it right back. Because my ex always wanted to remain in an emotional state all the time with me, which was, that's a way to kind of manipulate and control the situation. And so to stay away from, and I would get involved in that. Like I was so used to being involved in that. I would get involved in it and think that I could win it, right? And it's just like, okay, you can't win this. It's unwinnable. And it took me a while for Chrissy to be like, no, we need to stick to the facts. Just steer her back. And I got really good after a while. I mean, I got to the point to where I didn't even talk to her anymore. I blocked her, and I said, before I sent her the last text, I said, if you need anything, contact Christy. And so for a few years, she had to contact Christy with any needs that she needed. And none of that emotional crap worked on her. Like, she's like, no, I don't think, you're not bringing it here.
Yeah, I bet that went well.
Yeah, it did not. It did not. And she was unhappy about that, but we did what we had to do. So, I mean, so April, you mentioned something earlier about there was some infidelity in your previous marriage.
Yes.
Jason, was there any of that going on in your previous marriage too?
There was.
There was. Okay.
It was, do you mean to talk more about that or let you roll?
Yeah. No, yeah. Share about it.
Yeah. Mine was, we were married. I was 21. She was 18, both virgins. I mean, as by the book as you can do it. And partially I was trying to follow the Lord. Partially I knew my dad would kill me. So, we do what we had to do. We got married, but even from the first month or so, there were issues physically with her. And, that led to a lack of intimacy. It led to bitterness. It led to her not full on cheating, but
emotional affairs.
Emotional and a little bit of physical stuff. Not probably a full on cheating situation, but if you knew the details, you'd say, yeah, that's still cheating. So, that was early on. Beyond that, we more or less became roommates. We ended up having a couple kids because I had no boundaries, and she said, I want kids. And so we have kids. I'm thankful for my children. I wouldn't give you a nickel for another one though. So, and then this one comes along. So, it was, but we were more or less roommates for the entire time.
Yeah.
And, so apparently her physical issues got fixed. I was never told about it. And it was just a surprise one day. Divorce is the only option. Here we go.
And within a month, she was like, had her kids and his kids together at church taking a Mother's Day photo.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks after I get the I'm done letter. They were taking a Mother's Day photo church
as a family.
As a family.
Wow.
So it was.
Ouch. So April, what about you? Tell us quickly a little bit about your situation.
Well, I mean, he cheated our entire marriage. I had found out the first time for sure that he had cheated right before we got pregnant with my son. Because I had messaged the girl and she confirmed it. But then we had Tucker, and we were really never intimate again after that, because he could never stay straight and clean and not be talking to other women and going out on me long enough to change things, and I would find out about girls that he would meet, or, he always kept his phone under lock and key. Like, I didn't know his password, and it was like, I would catch him in something. He would always roll it back on something I had done, or, I'm crazy for thinking that he keeps his phone locked for that reason.
Yeah. Wow.
So sorry about that too. If you saw, I had to lean over and let our little dog in. So we had our little baby dog. We only have one dog left. We're used to having more, but she was scratching and scratching and scratching at the door. I'm like, I need to let her in. Okay. And now I keep a blanket on my lap because I'm a cold person, and she came under the table and ripped my blanket off of me and is laying underneath the table now. So
she's a baby.
She is a baby, but I had to let her in because she wasn't stopping, and typically she's not that pushy. But how do you navigate the challenges of blending your family, especially when dealing with the high conflict exes? And I know from personal experience too. So I have 2 boys, and when Josh and I got together, I didn't have teenagers. My boys were 8 and 6. I got thrown into a 14-year-old girl and I wasn't used to having girls. So it's like, how are you guys managing blending the family, showing your kids what God expects? Like you guys are being amazing, like living separate and, until the time is right or you feel God is leading you to. But April, you have a son, and then Jason, you have 2 girls. So how has that been too for each of you?
It's kind of funny because
It's not
his
funny.
oldest, Bailey, is a lot like I was as a kid. So it's kind of God's way of being like, ha ha, and Tucker is a lot like he was as a child. So that's very frustrating sometimes because I think I see so much of myself and Bailey as a kid that I want to project on him. Like, she's going to do these things because I did these things, and we have to stop it. And we have to stop and be like, okay, just because we made those decisions as we got older, because we had these issues, doesn't mean that they're going to.
Yeah.
And, it's like a fine line of talking and encouraging what we see, because you don't see the problems in your own child sometimes as much as another
Yep.
person does. And so it's like a fine line of encouraging and saying, we see these things and this is what you can do to help, but without overstepping those lines, because there is a fine line in overstepping as well.
That's very, very true. It's very true. Yeah. We like to say that that's a good thing about being a blended family is you're both not bio parents. So you don't have, one of the parents doesn't have like them rosy glasses that overlooks everything. There's a step parent that's like, I really think you need to do this a different way, or like, and you're like, oh, so we think that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. It's a hard thing to adjust.
Yes.
It's a hard thing to adjust to because you always think your kid's right? Or you always think, right?
Yeah, my kid.
Or, right, yeah. Like, my kid's always innocent. They didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
You took it that
and
way.
And they didn't.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sums it all up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other thing that's hard in our particular situation is they'll come over here for dinner, and if everybody gets in trouble, we say, go to your rooms. Well, Tucker doesn't have a room here, and they don't have a room there.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of an issue. And Tucker and Bailey are the same child in a lot of ways. And God's got a really, me and him are going to have to talk about it one day, because I don't think this is at all funny, but I'm also not going to pretend I know best. But anyway, they're a lot the same kid. And if they need to be dealt with, you don't need to do it in front of anybody else. My youngest, you could get on to her on air and she wouldn't care. You'd be like, okay, sorry. But Bailey and Tucker have to be dealt with independently. Well, they go home. April handles whatever with Tucker over there. Well, my kids never see it. And of course, Tucker doesn't ever get in trouble, is what they think.
Sure.
And they never get in trouble. And it's like, no. And it's hard because in their eyes, it doesn't happen. And it's very frustrating. And that's even something that we have dealt with. Like, are you sure you handled it the right way with her when she talked to me like that? And yes, I did. And this is what we said, and blah, 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 blah. But it's just another hurdle of blending process. And I probably say it 3 times a day, and she gets tired of hearing it. But this is just another benefit of not living in the same place. And God's working on me. So we're still praying.
But it is a powerful thing, because it's you're not taking the road of least resistance. You are saying, no, this is the road of the most honoring thing to do, and there's going to be some issues that are going to come along with it. We're just going to have to learn how to walk through it, work through it, and communicate through it. It sounds like you guys are great communicators with each other, which is what you would need to have. But let's kind of bounce back here real quick. So you guys both come from toxic relationships from before, right? There's some infidelity, which let's just call it what it is. Ultimately, it breaks trust, right? Trust is a thing that is easily broken and extremely hard to rebuild or even have again. So tell us a little bit about how you guys manage that in your relationship today as a couple. How do you guys gain trust? How do you guys have trust between each other?
Well, right after we first started dating, we did some joint counseling sessions. I went through RTM for CPTSD, and she really helped us learn about just creating new pathways, because at first it's going to feel really yucky until you continually do new things over and over again and create a different path to realize, that it can be different. And I think it's gotten better over time. At first it was like we would be triggered and I would hold it in, and then he would be like, what's wrong? And it'd be a whole thing. And it worked both ways, and now we're at the point that it's like, you're never going to believe what just came up for me. And we like laugh about it, because when you say it out loud, it sounds so stupid. But I mean, that's kind of been therapy in itself, that we laugh and, that we can share those things, and that the other person doesn't make us feel wrong for feeling that way. Because I think both of us in our previous marriages were made to feel like, when we felt a certain way, like we were stupid for feeling that, or you shouldn't feel that way. And so to have reassurance that it is okay to feel that way and everybody feels that way, that also helps build trust.
And I think realizing that each other came from the same place, different circumstances, but pretty much we were at the same place. It was, I mean, there was one time that I can't remember the whole circumstance, but there was money that was missing out of my wallet. And so, the first thing that triggered in my head was, she really just took money out of my wallet. I cannot believe she did this. But we were able to be like, hey, guess what story I just wrote in my head about you? You're going to love this. And it's, because it's ridiculous when you really say it out loud. And we're able to almost make fun of ourselves in the process, because at some point you just got to decide you're going to trust this person or not.
Yeah.
And that's something that my counselor, before I met her, he said, you're just going to have to decide, are you going to have another relationship or not? If you're not, it's okay. If you are, you got to be all in.
Yeah.
You can't just kind of be half in, half out, and kind of trust them and kind of not trust them, because all you're doing, you're going to fail. You just got to make that decision. And
yeah, I love, it sounds to me, there's a lot of communication, right? Which is something we want to talk about in a minute, but it sounds like there's a lot of communication, but it sounds like there's a lot of transparency between you two as well. And living even 100 yards away, but coming from the history that you have, you're like, we're not going to allow the history that we have to live in the present that we're currently working on in the future we're creating. And so, being open and saying, hey, I got something, a story that I had in my head, I want to tell you. Most of us would be super insecure about even saying that, because you said it. It sounds stupid. Like, how could I even think this or feel this way right now? And I think there's so much power in that, because if you feel safe enough to share that with the other person, that the other person is going to say, you are stupid for thinking that, so that level of transparency and openness is definitely important.
Not me. If I wrote a story in my head, I know it's true. So we need to have a conversation about it, because I've convinced myself all the way around that I'm right. And this is the story I wrote, and I know I'm right. So let's have a conversation about it, because I want to believe that you're telling the truth, but God's honest truth is I don't. So we need to talk about it.
So the thing is with Christy, nobody knows this. Christy's right about everything. And people just don't know that. And so you guys are really lucky today that you get to meet the only human other than Jesus that's right all the time.
That's my brain. But no, I know that I'm not right.
It is an honor.
He said it's an honor. Right, it's an honor. You're welcome. Right. Didn't even know it was going to happen today. You should see her walk on water. It's really cool.
Oh my God.
It took a while to get there. I mean, there were several stories, and I don't know what the clinical term is, but when you make up something in your head about somebody else, and that definitely happened. I mean, when you make the story up, you do believe it to a degree. And it did take multiple storytelling sessions for us to kind of realize that we both do this. I mean, honestly, everybody does it, but we both do it. We're coming from the same place. And most of the time they're equally ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
I think the enemy uses just enough truth, to make it seem truthful.
Spot on.
I agree with that.
Christy, you, long years ago, said something that really sticks with me. She calls them thought bubbles. We put thought bubbles like cartoons over people's heads. We're just assuming this is what this person's thinking, feeling, did, whatever it is. We put these thought bubbles above people, and it's like we're bought in on that truth, when it's so much easier to just say, you know what, I'm just going to talk to them about it. I'm just going to open up a level of communication here to be able to kind of talk to them about it. And that's been hard in our marriage, but it has been one of the keystones to growing and strengthening our marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. So a little bit ago, you guys mentioned about, you at the beginning, you feel like it's important to show your kids the right thing to do and God's design for marriages and how that is. How can you share some of the ways that you do this when it comes to specifically speaking bad about the other parent to your kids? So Josh and I know firsthand how hard it is not to speak negatively about the other parent, especially when the kids tell you some of the things that the other parent is doing. You guys are doing a great job, I think, in my mind, of showing your kids a godly example of living separate and, managing the family, to the best of your abilities in a godly way right now. But what else is there besides, not speaking badly about
Well,
the spouse? That and
I think my son, he hasn't really got to the point that he realizes how his dad is yet. I think he's starting to think it in his head, but he hasn't necessarily put it out there yet, to say anything. But his oldest for sure, comes to him with issues she has with her mom, and we just tell her, your mom loves you, and whether you want that relationship or not, you need to have it because it's important to have.
Well, and she was 11 when, 10, getting ready to turn 11 when everything went down. And so, she was old enough and asking questions. And I don't ever want to make mom look bad because I've got divorced friends and people in my family that are divorced that have said what I admired about my parent was they didn't talk bad, blah, blah, blah.
right.
And so I've really tried very hard. But, the 11-year-old comes and says, just a point blank question about did you not love mommy anymore? I mean, that's a hard question because I didn't want this. I don't know everything going on, but this is not what I had planned and this is not what God had planned. But this is what's happening. And so I don't know. We're here. But it's very hard to not point any fingers. At some point they're old enough, they'll figure it out. And that's also heartbreaking because my oldest doesn't want to go to her mom's house.
She's gotten better.
She's gotten a lot better. But I mean, there was a time where she ain't leaving the house. You're going to have to drag me out of this house. And, then her son is excited to go to his dad's house, and which also hurts on some level because it's like, you don't want to be here. It's a weird thing, but we see both sides of it, and it's sad for him,
but it's worse.
But it's worse on the other end. It's weird. It's screwed up all the way around. It's a problem, but it's bad either way. But it's hard to try to just stick with what's going on here and in these houses. We just had a situation Monday morning. That would have been yesterday. Okay, that's how my week's going. So Monday, my two were getting ready to head to their mom's house, and they were like, I wish we could stay here another week. And I'm like, I know, buddy, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And the oldest said, I wish we could too, but mom said your work schedule won't allow it. And I said, that's no. We both wanted 50% of the time with each of y'all. We both love you. And for her to say that is not accurate. We have an agreement, and we agreed that we would do half and half because she loves you and I love you. And I mean, it's hard to be polite and kind in that situation, but I fully believe that as these kids grow up, that's what's going to make a difference. And that's what opens you up to be able to say, that's the way God expects us to treat everybody. And if he could treat mama like that after what she did, I can do this too.
I mean, I think it's,
That's good.
you know, it's looking at things in the future instead of saying looking at things today, trying to get some self, you know, individual gratification, because we do feel like, hey, I've earned the right. You know, your mom is not a good human. You know, she has not done good things, and she is not, and you need to know. And we feel justified in that. But to be, you know, mature enough to say, hey, no, God will take care of it, and we can justify to that because we've had it happen. I mean, my kids grew up and their mom is not a good human. And we had a really hard time not saying that during all the years. But now my kids have no problem saying it. They know. I mean, my son's 21, my daughter's 26, and they're just like, mom, you know how she is, you know? And so they feel comfortable saying that. We don't get in a bashing session over it, and I won't. But, you know, I feel comfortable with them if they want to bring something to me and talk to us about it. You know, we do that now. And I think that's hard in early on not to do that, because you're just like, ooh, if you only knew, you know, it's like we feel like we need to vindicate ourselves, you know, with that stuff. So, but let's talk about victories real quick. You know, you guys, you know, have apparently found some victories in it. April, what do you think is the greatest victory that you feel like you've had today, you know, over in this relationship with your children, with anything? What do you feel like?
Victory in Jesus.
Well, you know, I think for a long time, I mean, you know, I struggled with drug addiction, and then that, you know, I got clean, but I spent another decade of my life in a toxic marriage, and I just wanted to be loved for who I was. And I didn't understand why I had to suffer for so long. But looking back on it now, like I realized that what God was doing was strengthening me, and this is gonna make me tear up. But it made me who I was supposed to be for Him, you know. And I don't think we would have the relationship we have today had I not gone through what I've been through in my life.
Yeah, love it, Jason.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because everybody goes through stuff. Everybody's got stuff. But had I not been through the stuff that I've been through, I couldn't appreciate who she is and be able to form a relationship that will last, because she wouldn't understood, and I wouldn't have understood her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, apparently it takes me a little bit longer to sink it in, because I was married for 19 years. But you know, I took a little more punishment to make me understand what's going on. But you know, I think that's the key, and that's what I'm trying to get through my brain with living in two separate houses, is when God's ready, it will happen, just like everything else has along the way. And I will tell y'all, a big victory has nothing to do with the relationship, but it's a big deal. The church we're going to, just trying to get my oldest off of, she's attached to her daddy. I mean, she's all over her daddy. I mean, we're sitting beside each other in church. She's not going to youth group. It's not happening, period, ever. Do not even ask that question. That's her stance. And it's been about a week or so ago on Wednesday night. We went to church. We came home, and right before we were doing devotion, she said, "Hey, I need to tell you something." And I'm like, "Oh, dear Lord, what is this?" And she said, "I need to start going to youth group." I'm like, "Okay." And she said, "I don't know. God just won't leave me alone about it." And I said, "Do you know why God won't leave you alone?" She said, "Why?" I said, "Because that's what me and April have been praying for."
Yeah.
Our prayer was, "God, we're not telling her. You tell her."
Yeah.
Because she can listen to us. So you tell her. And she's like, "So this is your fault." I'm like, "Nope, this is God's fault. It had nothing to do with me." But just to see her as bitter at the entire world as she was for 2 years. She gets up and reads a chapter or two in her Bible every morning, and talking about going to youth group now, it's encouraging this daddy's heart to see that, you know, God can turn everything around. And, you know, it's going to be good with all of the kids in the end. They're going to be fine. The main thing is we've got to be good.
Yeah, that's so true.
You're sharing hope, you know, and I think that's what people need the most of. Everybody's story is different, you know, and I think it's real easy for us to put ourselves in a box and say, no, you don't understand. Our situation's different. So success isn't possible for us. And that's just what the enemy wants us to believe, is the truth is, God wants all of us to have a success in this life in the sense where we can honor and glorify him with our lives. And the way that is number one, our obedience in him. When you guys sound like you are, working your hardest at being faithful in that. And second, I think it's really important that we, really pay attention to what God is trying to do and allow him to do those things. And I think, it's hard. And, we appreciate you guys being open and honest with us today. Do you have anything you want to?
Yeah, I do. So I don't know if we covered this really quick. So how did you guys meet?
She slid into my DMs.
Oh, there it is. She did too.
No,
He messaged me first, but I do network marketing, and I'll add people that I'll go to a friend, and if they have a lot of mutual friends, I'll add them because they're more likely to add you. And I added him, and so he had messaged me about the products, and after he was taking them, he was like, "How do you know Tiffany and Jason?"
I was going through my friends list because I'm not on Facebook. I don't know how this thing works. I never had a Facebook till I got divorced. So I'm trying to figure out who these people are and how they got there.
Yeah.
No, so go
And
ahead.
he's like, "How do you know, Jason and Tiffany?" And I'm like, "I go to church at Haynes." And he's like, "No, you don't. I went there for 15 years." And I'm like, "But I do." And so we both lived in North Carolina, and he moved down here with his ex-wife, and I started going to the church that they left within a week or two of when they left the church.
Wow. So you guys still go to that church then?
No, we don't, because
It's in North Carolina.
how do we hit the high spots on this story? The ex-wife's dream was to always live at Myrtle Beach. I own a business in North Carolina. Because I have no boundaries, I ended up moving down here. So I now live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, 4 hours from my business, because that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Again, no boundaries. That's where it gets you. And in our county, you have to live here 6 months to be considered a resident and to be. And anyway, 6 months and 1 day, I was presented with divorce papers.
Wow.
So I'm stuck, or I lose my kids. So
I got you.
Yeah.
here I am.
Here you are. Yeah.
Get it.
So that's
And so then she moved down here because she loves me.
She's following you.
I love the beach, and that's what I try to tell him when he gets frustrated at us living in different houses. I'm like, it could be worse. We could be traveling 4 hours to see each other,
Yeah.
but we're not. We're 100 yards apart, and it has its own frustrations, but it could be a lot worse.
No.
It truly
could be a lot, yeah.
And it will only get better, which is an amazing thing. It's you guys have a lot of future in front of you. So awesome. Well, real quick, just
My future soul bride, I gotta wear shades.
she's corny, but we love her. So as we wrap everything up today, do us a favor, share one thing you think has been the most important thing that's made everything work so far for you guys.
I think for me, it is when you have a moment where a disagreement is getting ready to happen, we're not seeing eye to eye. It's assuming that the person that you're in this relationship with, because they have invested more in you than anybody else, assuming their best intentions and giving them the space to explain themselves, because they're probably not trying to kill everything.
Yeah.
We're not understanding. What are we not understanding about each other? Instead of immediately going to, I knew it, breaking right into that trigger mechanism. That's the biggest thing for me personally is giving her the space.
All right. April?
Oh, goodness. We kind of talked about that one together, but I just think being open and honest and not holding things back, and taking the time to share and communicate with each other.
Love it. Yeah, we call it taking the chunky dunk. You have to be all in. You're either all in right?
Yeah.
You get in the water, get in. I mean, if you're not in, it won't work. You can't put one foot in and have one foot over in safety and think that it's going to work, because I mean, statistics say with children, second marriages, second really, you guys are in it right now. I mean, you guys are in it, or 70%, are going to be divorced or not going to work out. And that's, if you're not willing to sacrifice all of yourself for each other, then it's definitely not going to work. So do you have anything final words before we're done?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well,
we've covered everything.
We've covered everything we can.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we really want to thank you so very much for coming on, sharing your story of hope, your victories, and your unique situation that I guarantee will mend and blend with somebody else's story. So thank you so very much for coming on and sharing today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. All right. I want to thank those guys so very much for being on today. It's been awesome. We want to thank you. Do you have any future information or anything you want to get on and share before we close it up today?
No. September 16th, we're doing special marriage events in Flint.
Downtown Flint.
At Cafe Rima. And then November 4th, we are doing our own annual Perfectly Blended event that we have done. This is the third one that we're doing.
Third annual.
And then October 8th and 9th, we're going to celebrate your marriage on Mackinac Island.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of things coming up.
We have a whole lot of stuff coming up. So we'll make sure to give you guys a little bit more details of some of that stuff in the weeks to come. So I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Jason and April today as well. And thank you for being here.
I thank them more.
She usually does. She's like, I have to win. Okay. We'll see you guys next Tuesday live here on the show. We'll see you then.
Bye.